Welcome, listeners, to the Grande Bouffe, the Big Feast, with myself, Cole Smithey, this week's special guest, Mikhail Karadimov. As always, we're here to copiously consume international politics and culture through the prism of a single film and a different craft beer each week. Welcome, Mikhail.
Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So nice to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, it's I guess I would say it was a long time coming, but it's only been a little bit over a month as we discussed stuff there.
Yeah.
And I'm excited here to talk about Kieślowski for the first time, I feel like, in forever. Did the Three Colors trilogy on Wrong Reel way back when with James Colbrax, who's been on the... James Colbrax, that's not his actual last name.
Hancock.
I always make that
I know, I think it's hilarious that he has the same middle name as... We're both from Richmond, and he has his middle name's Cole, and I go by my middle name.
Got it. Yeah, well, he hides it in his, I guess, moniker on Twitter, but... Yeah, so I'm just happy to be here. I have a Polish girlfriend. We have Polish beers, and
yeah, tell us about the beer.
Wanted Żywiec, to be honest with you, which is the other Polish beer that you'll get like around Greenpoint. This is, I guess, TYSKIE.
Okay.
I hope that's right. And it's just that if you live in Greenpoint or you're in Greenpoint, you go to any bodega, there is just Polish beer everywhere because it's a predominantly Polish neighborhood. And my girlfriend's Polish, and that's part of the reason why we live there.
Nice. And
I thought the beer was a nice pairing. Well, I mean, I guess they're both nice pairings because they're international beers. They made their way across the ocean, and, you know, this is Kieślowski's arguably first international film with a co-production with a French company, so, hey, I made it work. I tied it all together.
Yeah, it's got the obligatory crown with the cross on top.
They were very bold people.
And Polish, it's made with Polish hops in the spirit of Poland, and... I don't know. What does this say? What is that? What is that at the top?
Oh man, I don't fucking know. I don't read Polish.
Oh, okay.
Oh no. I have a Polish girlfriend. I'm Ukrainian.
Okay.
We both have been fucked over by Russia repeatedly.
Sure.
That's probably why we get along.
Okay. Where did you meet your girlfriend?
We met on the old internet.
Nice.
You know how
classic
millennials are meeting these days.
Oh, that's where I met my wife. Yeah.
So there we go. Yeah, and we met, and it was I don't know, it was a instant kismet sort of energy because she has Eastern European neuroses, I have Eastern European neuroses. There's no need to explain to anybody who has an American sensibility. It's perfect. We just start from like a great foundation.
Nice.
And yeah, she slowly and surely got me into Polish film. To do my due diligence as a boyfriend, started watching some Polish films, ones that she recommended and everything. But of course, I knew Kieślowski, and so I took the dive on Kieślowski. Terrified that he would be very dull and boring. It's kind of like when someone tells you to watch Bergman, you're like, is he the chess guy? He's the one with the fucking chess. And so Kieślowski had the same effect. I'm like, oh my god, he made a trilogy based off colors. Give me a fucking break. And then you watch the movies and they move, they sing. There's some laughter there. Yeah. Sure, I mean, it looks miserable, but that's just Poland on camera. You can't do anything about it. And yeah, it was shocking how much I fell in love with him. I regard him fairly highly. I don't know as much of him as I probably should. And I haven't completed his entire filmography, as I mentioned to you off air. I haven't watched the Decalogue, but I've watched a bunch of his short documentaries and watched most of his other movies. And
I've not gotten through all of the Decalogue. I have to say, it was so overhyped. I felt like that by the time I got around to watching it, I think I've seen about 6 of them. I was not so overwhelmed and impressed as a lot of people are when they see it.
I think people are easily blinded by anything that's like that monolithic when you're staring it in the face. Yeah, like everyone loves to hear of something that's 10 hours. Like already you're going to hail it as either a masterpiece or a misconstrued misfire, but that it's very worth like going through the rubble to find the good pieces of it. Like I don't think I've ever heard of a director endeavoring or putting forth something that was like fucking 6+ hours and everyone just across the board is like, well, you wasted your time, guy. Yeah, but I mean, I can't help but also get like, man, it's just when you hear there's a 1,000-page book that everyone's talking about, you're like, what the fuck's in this 1,000 pages? I gotta know. So.
Yeah, the curiosity wins out.
Yeah.
And of course the Three Colors trilogy, which was that the last thing he made before he passed away at age 56?
Yeah.
He
was Redwood's last movie.
Pancreatic cancer, is that what got him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had that old Eastern European cancer that you can't chase it away.
And he'd been really sick as a child, like people like I think Scorsese was sickly as a child, and
just
so
kept looking out the window.
Yeah, so really had that cinematic view on life.
You could tell, especially towards the end, it's just a lot more. Well, camera buff, I guess, is the most the most obvious sort of metaphor that he played around with the idea of reflections and cameras and being on one side of the glass, on the other side of the glass. I mean, as we both know, you've rewatched the movie recently. I watched it for the first time, but it's not exactly subtle. And, there are a lot of reflections in this movie, a lot of distorted images through glass and things like that.
Yeah, he uses that image system really well, and especially in establishing the doubles, the double Veronique, Veronica and Veronique, who see each other through the window of a bus.
Yeah, and the buses. I was reading an interesting Criterion article today at work when I should have been working. Mm-hmm. And the author of the article, I'll find it later in my notes, they're going to make too much noise, but he said something along the lines of how it was interestingly shot because it's like this 360 motion of they're spinning around each other because the bus is turning around her and she's spinning to keep up with it. Uh-huh. It kind of creates this weird like vortex that's like, it's almost figuratively a black hole that if these two actually met, this paradox would unleash like a black hole in the middle of our universe and suck everything in. And I just thought, oh, what if, that's a cool way of reading this movie of like, this is all one big, like we didn't know, the world didn't know that we were a hairbreadth away from these two Veronicas meeting and the world being sucked up into a black hole.
The doppelganger effect.
Yeah, and parallel universes would collapse and things like that.
Now, is that in Poland where that shot happens?
Yeah, it's in Krakow. It's like in a square in the middle of Krakow.
And there's a protest that's going on.
Yeah, there's some sort of rally everyone's running toward.
Yeah, all the college students and Veronique has her sheet music.
Yeah, and her head's down, naive of the cultural progression that's occurring around her. Yeah.
And I saw this movie when it came out. I was living in San Francisco. I saw it in 91, and I was just drawn so much into this film by the music. The music is just gorgeous. I have the soundtrack. I think a lot of people who see the movie are really swept away by the music.
Yeah, it's the guy's name is, oh my lord, let's try to pronounce this one. Zbigniew Priesner. Probably Priesner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they even like came up together with a fake name for like the fictional composer inside, because I think they use the same music in Blue, the Juliette Binoche one. Mm-hmm. It's the same music, and it's by a fake composer they created, which was something Vander Boenemeyer. Mm-hmm. Vander Boenemeyer is like a Dutch composer, which I thought, I always love it when authors do that, especially, I mean, or filmmakers or authors. Have you ever by any chance read Roberto Bolaño, the Chilean author?
No.
He does this great thing of like, he's like Borges, he likes to write about writers and the mythology of writers, but then you never know if he's making up a writer or he's talking about a real writer, and then you have to go do research and you find out he's fucking with reality. I always love it when they do that of like, there's a composer who composed the music to this movie, but then they made a fake character for some reason that never shows up that actually claims the property of it.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's fun. He's like playful that way sometimes, and just like his meta-ness and how he decides to like crack through that mirror or through that screen.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Kieślowski's past, because he started out as a documentarian. He was very pessimistic, as a lot of course, Eastern Europeans are, very cynical, very pessimistic. And I think that, and of course, this is the first film that he made outside of Poland. He had French money, and this was what, of course, introduced him to the international stage. Yeah. But when he was starting out, he was very focused on the human struggle. And I just want to hear what you know or think about his earlier.
Yeah, he also like
background.
He also went to Łódź, which is like a highly prized, highly considered, or well considered rather, film school in Poland, and it's in this little fucking industrial factory.
It's not Lodz?
Town. No, it's Łódź, because so L with a little cross through it. It's a W sound, so it's Łódź.
Oh.
And so the W is V.
Okay.
And then an L without a mark.
I've been saying it wrong for decades.
Yeah, I learned the hard way too when I went to Poland. I'm like, hey guys, let's go to Lutz, and they're like, no, it's not that.
Right. So it's the same film school
Łódź.
that Polanski had gone to probably a decade before Kieślowski got there.
Kuminski, what's that guy? Spielberg's DP, Kuminski, something along those lines. Also, he went a lot of DP. A lot of them went there for DP work specifically, and oddly enough, a lot of them wanted to be architects at some point or another too. I find that actually happens a lot in Poland. I find that a lot of people are architects or they're graphic designers, and they're just like. it's strange that they keep maybe it's a structural thing. Their head's so structured and everything from the oppression, but yeah, he went to Łódź, and Łódź, if you ever been there, is like the grayest fucking most industrial factory. One of those towns in Poland is just so gray and and if you watch his early documentaries, you see that industrialness like come through, because it's very much those early documentaries. You'll have to forgive me because I watched them during like a festival in Yale where I watched a bunch of short Polish documentaries, so I might mix them up with other filmmakers that he were his contemporaries.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember this one probably is not him. Well, he did one where it was like the Night Watcher or something, where it was like a security guard of some place or something, and just follows him through his day. And like he used to be such a just kind of grounded procedural director. I mean, I guess that's what happens with documentaries. You just follow and find the story step by step. And you see that in his early movies too, like his scripts of, did you ever watch The Scar, where it's like this guy comes over to build the factory and everything, help this town? Like that's very grounded. That's very sort of realistic, and that handheld sort of sensibility that they picked up as documentarians is still there, but it's still very grounded conversations. Deep mire of politics, deep mire of understanding of Polish sort of society and how that all works, the economy. Whereas, like, I'm going to jump forward real quickly, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
What I noticed with this movie, though, with Double Life of Veronique, is that he starts running away from the politics or the Polish politics, especially, I mean, since he's trying to find an international audience, he has to do that. He can't really fucking abide by that. But it's funny because he does have a scene where she's running away from Polish politics, quite literally, which his film started to do with this film, and she is, from what I've read, literally running west, in the direction of west, which is what he started doing if you want a Western audience and things like that. So you see how politics slowly just kind of started shedding off his movies, because by then, he made Blind Chance and then No End, and No End is still a little confusing as to what the fuck's going on there politically. Did you see that one by any chance?
No, I have not seen that one.
It's like a woman lost her husband, who was a very young and very skilled and liberal progressive lawyer during the movement in the 80s that happened in Poland. I can't remember what it is right now, but they were trying to bust out of communism, obviously, and the communism oppression. And so it's kind of a ghost movie where the lawyer is just always kind of standing over her and not really saying anything, and she's just going through her life after her husband. And there's this case that's going on with a poor Polish person, and the politics were very difficult for me to follow. And then Double Life of Veronique comes in, and all of a sudden politics drop off, earthly matters kind of drop off, and he's more into the metaphysical, metaphorical, philosophical stance on life, and bigger questions, which
Vilmos
is appropriate.
Zsigmond, is that how you say his name?
Which one's that?
That's the cinematographer who worked with Spielberg, though, who also went to Lutz.
I thought it was like something close to Kuminski. It's like a K sounding. What'd you say again? Say it again.
I think it's Vilmos Zsigmond. I guess maybe that's Hungarian. Yeah, maybe that's Hungarian. Different cinematographer. I'm just trying to put together more. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was interesting, the evolution that his career took. But I mean, have you watched those documentaries? What did you make of them, if you have?
I've really just caught up with what they have on Filmstruck. Of course, this movie is streaming on Filmstruck, and so I watched the documentaries about Kieślowski, where they showed clips from the documentaries, and I think he really just got fed up with that whole. He really felt like he hit a ceiling with documentaries and just wasn't interested in doing them anymore. He'd outgrown them and wasn't going to go back.
Did he say if it was like an exposure thing with documentaries too? Because I know that after the Decalogue, he's like, yeah, it was great, but like no one out of Poland's gonna watch it, which wasn't not true. No one watched it for like 10 years except for a festival, like here and there.
Well, it's interesting to me about this movie. The characters. I mean, it's certainly from a feminist point of view. I think it's a really strong movie. Yeah. Because these are very sexually liberated characters. Veronique is sadly. I mean, there's spoiler alert here. There is a death that occurs, and he gives the French version of the doppelganger a lot more screen time than he does.
That was surprising.
It's as if he wants to get out of Poland. Yeah, and that when I watched it recently, I think when I first saw the movie in '91, I was a lot younger. I didn't really know what to make of the movie so much, other than that it's a very beautiful film, and it's a very touching. It's an emotionally touching movie, and I think that comes through Kieślowski's. Well, for one thing, his artistic relationship with Iran Jacob, which is amazing.
How do you say her name? Because I couldn't figure out.
I don't know. I mean, you could say Irene Jacob. I think is fine. Sounding. It sounds very American. Iran Jacob, I think, is probably.
Jacob, okay. Well, it sounds so much more beautiful already.
Yeah, it sounds a little nicer.
Yeah, she's also just. Yeah, how do you take your eyes off her? Like, it's one of those, like, Bergman's like, the face is everything. It's like, shit, this chick's got a face on her. And obviously not just for looks, but, like, she does this thing, and she does it in red, so I guess it's just, like, an actual tick of hers, but she blinks with one eye occasionally.
Yeah.
You ever catch that? And it's just, like, and it's such a nice little visual tick to go along with the idea of the movie of, like, anomaly. Like, this anomaly of, like, one eyelid blinking as opposed to two. It's just something so strange and a little bit off.
And she developed some of that stuff, I think, like the way that she bites her lip or she pinches her lip. Yeah. He worked with her very closely to create these little mannerisms for her, the way that she puts her hand on her face, this kind of stuff. And I think when she auditioned for him, he had her pretend like she was waking up from sleeping, which is, I mean,
it's tough.
It sounds, like such a simple thing.
I remember when I was younger, my dad used to be an actor and a director in Ukraine also, like for the stage, like little local productions and things like that. And he, I remember we went to see a Russian play once together in Brighton Beach, because they have that theater over there that does like clean Russian. There are no subtitles over your head or anything to fill you in. You have to be Russian to go there or speak Russian. And there was one character that was just asleep in bed for about 20, 30 minutes and couldn't move on stage. And I was talking to my dad afterwards. He's like, that was the toughest performance on set. She was not allowed to move for 30 minutes. And like people are looking at her, strangers. It's tough not to flinch in the moment like that.
Yeah.
And then it further reminded me of, it's not necessarily my favorite movie or anything, but Blue Valentine.
Yeah.
I remember hearing a story that...
Oh, boy, that movie.
Yeah, whatever you feel about that movie.
When Ryan Gosling comes to the office and she's cheerful and he's is this where all the happy stuff happens?
Yeah, I see. I don't even remember. What is that towards the end when he's like a fat slob at that point, and like his hair is like falling off or some shit?
No, I think
and she goes into the nurse. He goes into the nursing station.
No, yeah, something like, I don't know. I can't remember where it happens in the movie, but I just feel like she's such an evil person. And,
well, they're both not very good.
Well, this is the issue that I have with movies like The Endless, the Jim Carrey movie. Spotlight, Endless Spotlight.
Oh, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
I hate that thing.
Yeah.
Incompatible people. Guess what? I don't care. You're incompatible. You have no business being with each other. Incompatibility. Heads up, people. If you're with somebody that you're not compatible with, get the fuck out of that relationship and get with somebody you are compatible with.
Yeah, but it's also nice to think about the movie. I don't watch that movie anymore. It also just depresses me. But the idea that you will... I like the idea that it discusses in a fun way the idea of an on and off relationship of like, this is why people they just fucking forget all the shitty things that they did to each other and like, well, let's try this again. I have all these great memories left of you. I've excised all the bad ones. Let's do it again to ourselves. That's how I read the movie.
Yeah, I don't want to watch. I don't want to watch.
I don't
want to watch that. Exactly, it's depressing. I don't want to watch that. And then to pretend like it's some kind of feel good thing because it's Jim Carrey. I don't want to be there.
I always found it morbid, but I was always depressed as a kid. So I came out when I was like 14 or 15 or something.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, it's so depressing. I'm like, yeah, man, that's fucking life.
Yeah. Well, I was talking. James Hancock and I took him as my guest to see The Predator the other night, which is just awful. And,
that's unfortunate.
And I just, because we're both from Richmond, and I was telling him that, the thing about Richmond growing up there was that, it's such a melancholy place. I don't know how anyone can live there and not be depressed all the time. I was depressed the whole time that I lived there, and that was part of the reason that I wanted to go to college in San Diego. And sure enough, guess what? I wasn't depressed anymore. I went to San Diego State, and I was happy all the time.
Yeah, I remember I was traveling through. I was going to see a Kanye Jay-Z show, Watch the Throne, like whatever, in college, and we were hitting up all these like South Carolina, North Carolina towns along the way because it was in Greensboro. We went to Raleigh, however it's pronounced.
Yeah, Raleigh.
And every single city we hit like that, downtown Saturday or Sunday, it's just no one's there. I've never seen anything. I've never seen a downtown so empty and depressing looking.
Yeah.
I was utterly depressed every fucking day of that trip because I didn't know that you could build a city and then put no one in it.
Yeah, I hear you. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was terrifying. It's like, oh my God, it's a Twilight Zone episode. Someone please fucking wake me up from this.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. Well, how did we get off on this?
I don't know. Because we're talking about Poland.
I apologize.
And no, it's because I'd say probably maybe a third, maybe even less than a third of the movie happens in Poland, and then the rest is quick. And then the rest is in France. And I like the relation. She has these relationships with these men, but nothing's ever really explained. And and
the movie never hinges on them or her agency never really hinges upon it. And once it is disrupted, like it is with that French guy who's named Alexander or something along his line, the marionette Renaissance man who also writes books and tracts and treaties or whatever he does.
Yeah.
I like, I've always wanted to fuck around with this idea of what does it mean to be a main character, and the idea of, like, we think sitting across from another we're protagonists, but we're also sitting across from each other. I'm like, you're a supporting, dude, I barely know you're a supporting player in my fucking movie.
Right.
And so what does that mean to fuck with you? And so he does a scene like that where he's like, I just wanted to experiment with you. I wanted to see for my next book if a woman would follow this game and meet me in this cafe. And it pops in her head like, oh my God, I thought I was the lead in this narrative. It turns out I was just a little mouse running around the fucking maze, a supporting player in his story. And also it goes well with the movie of like, are you all that special? Because there's two of you.
Right.
Like, how many variations of a person are there really in the world? I actually read that in the Roger Ebert review, I think, recently while reading about this movie. It was just like, how many versions of you do you think there are out there?
Right.
And, like, yes, this movie in one sense is a nice warm hug in that, I don't know, it talks about emotions in a very quiet manner. You feel like you've got to know this person through these shots and this story and everything. You feel like you want to hug her, but at the same time, the movie has that Polish cynical twist on it of just like, how many versions of you do you think there are out there of you? You're not that special.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably 10 for sure.
Yeah,
in the world, and I certainly think that Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who made Amélie,
Alien 4. Don't forget Alien 4 Resurrection.
He had to have been inspired.
Oh, the color schemes
to make Amélie and the storyline and the character, the look of the character.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that there would be, if not for this movie, I don't think that Amélie would exist.
I would say, like, even when he started fucking around with these greens and yellows for a short film about a killing, like, something clicked in that dude's head and was like, I love this color palette. I'm going to start playing around with this. Because, I don't know, it doesn't, now that I've seen Kieślowski, I don't know if it even fits for, I don't know, like, I like Delicatessen. I think Delicatessen's a fine movie. I thought it was fun. When I saw it once when I was a teenager, don't want to rewatch it. Don't want to rewatch any of his movies. I think he's a little too poppy for me.
Yeah.
But there's some, those colors work for Poland, and like there's and he says for a practical reason, everything's gray, so I have to like put color into my fucking lens, and so he would put like green red filters and make sure that some gold would wash through it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny because he even plays with it well in between, like, so a short film about a killing, it's so green that everything looks sickly. Like, you want to run away from the camera,
right?
As opposed to everything here is gold and green and gives it like this idea of hopefulness and spring and like, oh, the flower's about to start blooming and everything. It's funny how he could do so much with like with similar colors, whereas I feel like David Fincher always uses the same color scheme, but without necessarily changing up the variation or the ultimate effect of those colors.
And he's still, with the sex scenes, and there's a number of sex scenes in the movie, and they're treated in a very naturalistic fashion, of course, in the performances, and that nice warm lighting. It really serves those scenes. It brings you into those scenes without making you feel like I don't know, a voyeur. There's something natural about it. It gives you just enough distance, but it also welcomes you in.
On that note, On that note, it was just it's interesting because you say voyeur, because there's so much in this film that's voyeuristic, and in Blue also, I feel like there's a similar scene in this film that there is in Blue, in that that entire situation where she's listening to the recording, right? That the poet, marionette, whatever, the guy who loves everything and does everything.
Yeah.
He sends the recording that's like just great audio design of some guy like walking around the city or something.
Yeah.
And there's something about that scene that, you know, her final reaction of where she's just like, after the car bomb or the car crash or whatever, she gets spooked and she says, "Who is there?" I was watching that scene and I was getting that sensation before she was even done with the recording. I'm like, oh my God, I felt like someone was in my apartment while I was watching the movie, because there's something about being so keenly aware of sound that you start making up sounds around it. Or this idea that like it's like, it gives me that sensation of, you have something you haven't told someone else yet that they should know, so you feel like you hold power over them in a very shitty way, and it always makes me sick knowing that I know something over someone else. And so that seems like, when you hear such a private thing of someone's recording, there's the idea of someone sent you that and knows what they're doing. That's kind of fucking creepy.
Yeah.
And then there's her who's walking around with this person who sent, because the audio recording is from the person who sent it, so she's walking around with the person who's stalking her, which is an inherently creepy of entanglement. And there's a similar scene in Blue, I find, in a voyeuristic sense, in that when she's looking out the window and the guy's being mugged or beat up or something on the streets, and he starts calling all around, like, "Can someone open the door? Can someone open the door?" And then she pretends she's not in the apartment. It's just this idea of, like, complicitness also, of, like, you hear this weird shit going on. Where are you? It displaces you. That's what it is. That's what makes me so bothered by it, because she's listening to audio that's set somewhere else, and again, she's feeling that sensation of like, I'm somewhere else right now. And he's always just displacing you in spirit and physically, and I don't know how he does that. It's tough to put a finger on it.
I wonder what Kieślowski was thinking about this character. And there's a woman, remember the woman that shows up in this movie? That she shows up a couple of times, and she's a bitch.
And she just gives her, like, looks.
And just gives her dirty looks.
Yeah.
And Kieślowski never explains her presence or anything.
Well, okay, so backstory on all that stuff.
Tell me.
And so do you remember also the scene where she's sitting with the two young women as Veronique, and they're talking about this trial of, like, I'm trying to get out of this divorce. Can you please do this? Can you just pretend that you had an affair with my husband? That's supposed to be a bigger subplot also. So apparently what he wanted to do with the movie was he wanted to cut it differently for every screen that it shows on. So he wanted to further fuck around with this idea of butterfly effect, parallel universes, destinies, and how they kind of like speak to one another. So he apparently got through 15 cuts of the movie. So some were less opaque, some were more opaque, some were more on the nose and told you what the plot was all about, and some of them were even more confusing than what you watch now. And so one of the things that were axed was the subplot of her going through this trial and pretending that she had an affair with this man just to help her friend out. And apparently that woman who keeps turning to look at her is also, there was something more going on. Because she said also in an interview, I think it was actually in the Criterion interview I found on YouTube, she says, like, when she watched the movie, she was like, I watched the movie for the first time. There were so many scenes deleted. I had no clue he was going to do this with this movie.
Oh, yeah, right.
And so, it's just... it's interesting that even the process reflects what he wanted to talk about in the movie. Just like, there's so many variations to this. How do you even fucking, it was a...
Well, he co-wrote it with...
God, let's do his name now.
Yeah, I'm gonna hack it up if I try and say...
Piasiewicz?
Okay. Piasiewicz?
Yeah.
His first name is also Krzysztof.
Who used to be a lawyer.
Oh.
And that's why there's always so much legalese in the movies that they've written together. Yeah, he was a co-writer starting with fairly, like, a little late. I think No End was the first movie they worked on together. If you watch that, it's very heavy into lawyers and shit like that, as I told you earlier.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Iran Jacob shows up in Red. Mm-hmm. She's the star of Red. Juliette Binoche is the star of Blue.
And then, what's his name? Well, Julie Delpy is a character in White, but the main character is Jerzy Stuhl.
Mm-hmm.
Who I love. He's my favorite Kieślowski actor. That dude, he has the funniest, liltiest voice I've ever heard in my life, and he could say anything. I'm tickled instantly.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I know. When I first watched the trilogy, White was my favorite, and then I went back and I rewatched the trilogy about a year ago, and I came out really loving Red more than the other two.
Interesting. I always wonder how much of that is, like, for instance, I always talk to my friends about Godfather 1 or 2, a very lazy conversation. But it's still a fun one when you're drunk enough.
Sure.
And a lot of them will be like, Godfather Part 2. I'm like, yeah, but you just think that because it builds upon something that was already established, so fuck you, and there's, like, so much shorthand that you get to use in a sequel. So I always wonder with Red, since it has to be the culmination of, they were all in the same boat.
Uh-huh.
Is it like, it's tough? like, you get swept up into it, so you can't help but be like, this is the movie, this is the one that brings it all together.
Right.
I still like White a lot because it has that Eastern European sensibility and shit like that.
It's certainly the ugly one. It's the ugly duckling of the three.
Yeah.
You know, because he does so much great stuff with the light in blue and red, and in white, he's just showing you all
he
the
goes
all
back
the
to
grime.
Poland, it's just gray, white bullshit. And so it's ironically named White, but it's the grayest fucking town you could, like, take it to.
Yeah.
And the idea of just, like, it's the wackiest one also.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a weird, wacky revenge movie at the end of the day.
Yeah, he ships himself in the crate. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I can't. It brings a smile to my face even thinking about it. I love that movie.
Yeah.
But that movie was the one that disarmed me of just like, whoa, this guy has a sense of humor too. That's fucking cool.
Well, see, so this is the thing, is that I think, you know, was this his last film?
Red was the last film.
Oh, sorry, he made the trilogy after this.
After this one,
After this. So he was really, he was breaking out and really, I think, discovering his romantic sensibilities at this late in life. And this is the movie that did that. And then he went on and made the trilogy, and then he died. I think he probably had a sense that he was not going to make it another 10 years.
Well, so I think from what I hear is he knew he had health problems fairly early in his career, and one of the things they said, other than like obviously drink less bison grass vodka, smoke less fucking cigarettes, move out of Vooch because there's smoke in the air, was probably like you can't your filmmaking's just brutal, man. It's brutal to the system. You're getting older and everything. He knew it, kept doing it. Essentially does what Veronica does in part 1 of this movie, of just like pursues her art knowing that she has a heart murmur and just fucking kills herself doing it. Because he retired. He retired. He said Red's my last movie. He did his Soderbergh retirement. Who knows if he would have come back. He went to live on the countryside. He fished and read books. Yeah. And then he died 2 years later. It was like he had a premonition of some sorts, like these characters do, like all his characters do. Premonitions. And I often wonder this myself. Maybe it's because I'm Eastern European, I'm just a gloomy sensibility, but I've always wondered, do people who are going to die in 3 days have some kind of sixth sense feeling that something is off, that something is leading to something?
I bet some people do.
I bet some people, obviously not everyone, but like that idea, like even if you're going to die in a weird, crazy accident or like a stray bullet hits you, is there something going on bigger that's just crushing on you that you feel like an imprint on you, like, oh my God, something's about to happen to me, I'm not quite sure what. And if that's the case, he knows how to fucking direct it to a T. I always usually get that, I'm like, oh, which of these motherfuckers are gonna die in this movie?
Right. I just want to talk about the singing scene in the beginning.
Oof,
with Veronica, where Iran Jacob does a great lip syncing job. Very convincing.
Oh, really?
Very convincing that she's singing.
But okay. Are you being sarcastic?
No, I thought it was pretty convincing.
I don't know. It's just I always look to the neck when I see someone singing. Like, are their pipes coming out? Are veins a little bit twitching?
I gotcha. And so you didn't buy it?
Yeah, I don't buy it. Okay. Also, she can't. Yeah, I didn't buy it.
So, but in the scene, because she's auditioning. And then she, the woman is sitting there, and of course, even though they're completely smitten with her, and she's amazing, they still have to. This is like a Polish thing, right? They still have to drag her through the mud and say, there was disagreement about, whether we would take you or not. They're just gonna like twist the knife.
It's like, don't feel too great about yourself just yet. All right, we need you to be fucking focused and prime. We can't get you above the ether with your thoughts.
Right, because we're gonna bully you. We're gonna kick you around. So we just want to set you up so that we're not gonna kiss your ass.
It took a very long time for me to learn how to, like, I will pay a compliment readily. I don't take compliments very well. I think there's something suspicious about compliments.
I'm the same way.
Household.
I'm the same way.
I grew up in. Yeah.
I'm the same way.
But like, I don't know. I find that as I tell all like people that I've grown close to, like, people know that I like them because I feel comfortable enough to make fun of them. If I'm not making fun of you or making jokes around you, I probably feel very uncomfortable around you and have no desire to say anything to you. Right. And it's not because I'm a foul-mouthed sort of like, I'm just gonna dig into this person's ethnicity or something.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's just like you feel on edge to me. I don't like that. That's not my thing. And I think that's very much an Eastern European thing too, of just like, I don't know, like, I read something in the book once that if you meet us on the street, we're not very welcoming people. We have resting bitch face syndrome. But if you come into our homes or we go into some sort of intimate setting with a roof and four walls and there's a little bit of booze flowing, that's it. We're like, by the end of the night, we're going to be best friends and we're going to make sure of that. You know, and there's something about his movies that they're austere to a glance. You know, Poland looks like Poland. But at the same time, at the end of it, it's just such a human experience watching this film, and so I don't know. It's so mysterious, like a human being is. Like, you don't know who she is. You don't get a full read, but at the same time, you can't help but say, like, I know Veronica. I know Veronique.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think this movie is a social study and a character study, but mainly a character study of Veronique. And to me, it's one of the most anti-Hollywood movies. It's an anti-narrative for sure.
Oh yeah.
You know, this is not 3 acts. You know, whatever, somebody cheats on the other person, the jealous person comes back with a gun. There's none of that stuff. And I guess a lot of that complexity goes to the point that you were talking about, where Kieślowski had all of these different storylines that he was threading together and taking things out and putting things, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's the charm of this movie, is that you're thoroughly invested in the film because of Iran Jacob, because she's so fascinating and gorgeous and beautiful and interesting, and also thoughtful. She's a very thoughtful person.
Very thoughtful. I mean, there's a lot of just she was saying in interviews, like, sometimes it's very embarrassing to describe what she was doing at work, because they're like, "What'd you do all day?" And I was like, "Well, Kieślowski told me to stare at the sun reflected in a fucking mirror."
Right.
Like, okay.
Yeah. And
you see that, and she said that she had to, like, since he asks you to stare at things so often, you have to bring something new to every time you stare at something new. Like, why am I staring at that thing? What's the motivation of staring at that thing? How can I bring that across? And that's the toughest thing, I would say, as a director, because every time I write a script, I'm like, all right, cool, I have all this dialogue. How do I cut 50% of it out?
Right.
And then do that through a 5-second visual instead, or a 10-second visual that I linger on.
Yeah.
And that's always first, second, third draft. I'm like, cool, I think I know what the narrative orientation of this thing is, but now how do I just show all this instead of telling it?
Right.
Cut that.
Right.
And he's a fucking master, man.
Yeah.
He's a master.
Yeah.
And it's not very often that you get someone throwing a camera into people and moving the camera so much, and they're subtle on top of that. Which is part of the reason why I like Paul Thomas Anderson. I suspect that most people who are like super film critics don't like him, but whatever. We'll sidestep past that. But there's something about someone who's so brave.
Magnolia is one of my favorite movies. I love Magnolia.
Oh,
I know
okay.
a lot of people hate that movie.
I mean, I like all his movies, so I can't really say.
I really enjoy that movie.
I can't kill my dog.
I mean, the Master I was very disappointed with.
Well, that's my.
But
that's my favorite movie.
Really, I think There Will Be Blood is a masterpiece.
Yeah, I
really
feel like
I really love that movie.
But I like The Master for the same reasons I like this movie. Is that I've seen it 6 times and still inscrutable, but gives me enough that I keep fucking striving to learn more about it. And every time I see The Master now, I feel like I've lived the 7 years that they've lived together, and I hate that they're not together at the end. It's like it's a rom-com without giving me what I want at the end of them just like being together and riding off into the sunset. Because it doesn't have to be a homosexual thing. They're just clearly very much in love with one another.
Right.
And you could believe it that it's the histories entwining that they met several times before or something, but I don't know, I think that thing's a fucking
let's talk about the ending. Do you know about the Weinstein ending?
Yeah, I know the Weinstein ending.
I like the Weinstein ending. I have to say, I watched it. I watched the original ending, and then I watched the Weinstein ending, and I it appealed to me. I felt that it closed the movie as it should.
Yeah. I guess my only issue, I don't think it really detracts from the movie. I've only read the description of what happens. It's 4 added shots, they hug, but from behind the window.
Yeah,
thank God it's from behind the window.
It's only an extra 45 seconds probably.
Which it sounds fine. I don't think, I think if I saw that originally and I didn't know that Weinstein tagged that on, I don't know if it would have been detrimental to the film or not. It's just something about it being, even though it still came through the lens of a European, it just still sounds like such an American conceit of can we get 2 characters? Can we get someone, can there be some cathartic moment, not just her soft hand on this rough bark? Mm-hmm. But then again, I just like that. I love the juxtaposition of her lotion to fuck hand upon this rough, dried up bark. Mm-hmm. Who the fuck knows what it says? But I think it causes you to. I feel like a shot like that will cause you to think about a movie long after it's done in a way that a cathartic moment between a father and a daughter won't. You'll feel like maybe there's a little bit more closure, and so maybe the window's less open for thought afterwards and analysis, whereas this one's like, why the fuck is there a hand on the bark? Now I have to think about this movie a little bit longer. Fuck that.
See, I'm glad you said that, because it's funny. Of course, I'm going to have the Western sensibility that wants the catharsis, and of course, you're going to have the Eastern European sensibility.
Yeah, but I grew up here.
Yeah, but you have that sensibility.
I guess so.
You know,
enough people yell at you.
I dated a girl who had escaped from communist Romania, from Ceausescu's Romania.
Oh,
and in fact, I saw this movie with her in San Francisco, and that's where I was introduced to the Eastern European sensibility, and I found it quite fascinating.
Yeah, people like it.
It's interesting.
People are always fascinated.
It's different, you know. It's not it's not the same old. Oh, are we gonna go have fun? You know?
It's just like, what do you mean fun? Find that suspect. You don't tell me what's fun. I'll tell you what's fun. Right. You know, that's the Eastern European response.
Exactly.
Why are you smiling?
I just watched Free Solo, the documentary. Do you know about this? About Alex? I can't remember how you pronounce his last name. Herod, I think is his last name, something like that. But he's the free climber who climbed El Capitan.
Recently, right?
Yeah, about a year ago, and now the documentary's coming out.
Yeah, like he went up it a couple of times with a carabiner and stuff to like feel it out. And then
he practiced.
And then two guys tried it like a month later, and they fell. Did you hear that? Oh, it's this summer they tried it out after him, and they fell. Two guys, and they were attached together, so one guy fell and the other guy was holding, and apparently he's like, I guess we both have to go.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
But anyway, that's his psychology is you know, he doesn't want anyone telling him like when it's time to have fun. He doesn't like holidays or any of that stuff because you know, he doesn't want anyone telling him, oh, it's time that we're gonna have fun now. And I get that.
I get that too. I was just I think one of the most like relieving things as a writer I've heard was like after getting obsessed with Paul Thomas Anderson, just reading all those interviews, he's like, you know, you're not like always writing. It's not always a physical activity. You know, I mean, he's allowed to say it because he has money, he gets to sit around at home.
Sure.
But the idea of like, no, sit down, turn on TMC, and just let your brain wander, daydream a little bit, lie on your couch and just stare at the ceiling, listen to some music, just let your fucking brain wander around for the idea. And I mean, I think that's why I like him and why I like Kieślowski is that there's that wandering novelistic sort of feel as opposed to 1 act, 2 act, 3 act, you know? Mm-hmm. And you're never quite sure what the answers are. And I think you get that in daydreaming because I know, like, there's one thing I want to do in my feature film is that there's a thing that turns between part 1 and part 2, but part 2 never explains someone's murdered.
I forgot to introduce you as a filmmaker, Mikhail.
Hey, yo, I make films.
And you're a screenwriter.
Screenwriter, podcaster, just general lover of movies, and assistant editor at a company right now. Mm-hmm. And I just like this idea of, it's kind of like in that, okay, a better example since I don't want to reveal anything with the whatever I'm writing.
Yeah.
But what was that? Personal Shopper?
Uh-huh.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I did not like it.
I get this. I'm getting the sense that I like movies that you don't like. You like movies I don't like.
That's okay.
Well, that's great. I'm having fun with this.
Yeah, it's fun.
But there's that one scene where she goes up to the hotel. It's supposed to be this big confrontation between her and who killed the model that she was working for.
Yeah.
And they show none of it. Mm-hmm. And then he just walks out, and then this ghost walks out after him, quote unquote. And then she walks out, and they never say what happened in that fucking hotel room.
Mm.
But is that really important what they said? Mm-hmm. You probably can imagine what they said. You killed her. Nah! You know? Like,
right.
That's the whole dialogue.
Uh-huh.
But now, since you didn't give me the thing that I could probably fill on my own, now this movie's so much more mysterious to me. It's so much more ghostly to me. And I like directors who fuck around with that. He certainly fucks around with that in this movie. You get no answers whatsoever.
Right.
And you shouldn't. That's fine. I finished the movie and then I read a bunch of reviews for it, and everyone's like, I'm mystified. I don't know what it's about. And I'm like, at no point was I frustrated or wondered what it was about. I was like, it's just happening to me.
No. Well, exactly. And he plays so generously with the image systems and so gorgeously with the light. And, of course, the music is just so haunting and seductive that you're just being seduced, I think, constantly in this movie. The filmmaker is constantly seducing.
It's mesmerizing.
Yeah.
You don't know why you're watching. You're just going to keep watching it anyway. And very few filmmakers do that to me. He does that to me. What's his name? Peach the Pong, where's the call? I hope I'm saying that right.
Yeah, Peach the Pong, where's that cool?
Rizatakul. Okay, that's how you say it. Rizatakul. He does that.
They call him Joe.
Joe. No, I know. On the festival circuit, they call him Joe. He's a movie. turn it on at 2 o'clock in the morning. I love watching his movies half asleep because I'm like, am I dreaming? Am I watching a Joe movie? I don't even fucking know anymore. But I'm really enjoying it.
I hear you.
And those are my people. My people were like, get into dream worlds.
And there is certainly a line of thought that says that this is what cinema is about. This is what cinema is made for.
Yeah.
Cinema is your pathway into the dream state. And so,
but dream state could also be just a wild fantasy where it's just guns are going off, pretty women are flying through the sky, and bullets are listen, man, fucking Mission Impossible 6 is probably my favorite movie of the year.
I had the most surreal. It was a dream / nightmare the other night where my wife and I had gone to some resort, maybe like somewhere in Bermuda or something.
Yeah.
But it was one of those all inclusive kind of resorts, and a young. Blonde-haired Lawrence Welk was our host. He was like the concierge guy who shows you around, and we're sitting in the sand where the shore's washing up, and I look down to my left, and there are 2 severed children's feet.
Oh boy!
Just floating there in the water. So we get up and move. And then the spot that we moved to, again, evidently there's some contraption that's been chopping off children's feet.
Yeah.
And so
you see, that's a very Polish way of thinking about it. Just like, oh, there are feet next to us, honey. We have to move 10 feet down the beach. This great inconvenience of ours. Yeah, man. You're on the right track. You should watch more of Polish movies. Have you watched other Polish movies outside of Kieślowski, Polanski, and what's his name, the guy who did Possession? The main.
Oh yeah, of course. Come on, what's his name?
Żuławski.
Yes,
that's his name.
Yes,
I believe. Yeah, Possession. Ooh, talk about a movie I hated.
Oh, you hated that movie?
I keep trying with his movies, and I find them dull.
Okay, you thought Possession was dull?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. First of all, I love nothing more than the Polish director deploying handheld shots of tracking people with those like wide-eyed lenses, and it just gets buggy and shit. I think no one does handheld better than them when they're just chasing people.
Yeah.
That fucking... Listen, it has its moments, obviously, but then the stretches in between are so fucking dull, and I don't think he's as great tonally shifting as people would like to say he is. Like him going from that flamboyant, like, leotard-wearing character in Possession to then... Oh, it felt like 5 hours long. I don't know why. I know it's insane. The movie's insane. They fucking octopus, essentially. They all go crazy. They start murdering each other. The scene in the train station is fantastic, where she freaks out and busts the milk everywhere. Yeah. That's great performance.
Yeah, incredible. Isabelle Johnny.
I don't know. It just left ash in my mouth when I was done. I was relieved that it was over, and not because I thought it was like, oh man, like Martyrs of like, wow, that was grueling, but I thought it was rewarding too. I didn't think it was rewarding, right? And then I watched his first movie, which is kind of a similar topic, and I don't know. I'll keep trying.
Well, all right. So this is an interesting moment in the podcast because it's September, and we have an annual tradition on Le Grande Bouffe, the Big Feast, which is October.
Okay.
Next month. So, didn't mean to surprise you. Or I guess I did. Boo. So anyway, if you'd like to come back next month, I'm just putting it out there. If you have a horror movie that you are especially want to talk about, because you brought up Martyrs, and of course I don't know if you know about this movie Mom and Dad. Have you heard of that one?
I watched Moms and Dads earlier this year with Nicolas Cage, which I thought was fun.
Yeah, of course. There's The Descent. There's a bunch. There's a handful of
What's Mom and Dad?
It's a British film. It's out of control.
All right, I guess we'll figure it out off air.
But anyway, but I'm just putting it out there as a on air invitation that if you'd like to come back for a October, you're welcome.
I'm still scared. It happens every time. Yeah, no, we'll talk more about off air, because I have a couple of movies I fucking love. So,
yeah, because I can tell you have a lot to say about kooky stuff.
Yeah. I love kooky stuff.
Yeah, man. Exactly.
I love when the movie just takes a nice little depraved turn out of nowhere. Or if someone randomly dances. That's a huge thing of mine that I love. If there's a random dance scene in a movie, boom, you've been elevated one grade.
Nice.
Ex Machina? Who the fuck cares about that movie? Love that dance scene. Love that dance scene.
Nice. Yeah.
But the movie's or whatever.
Yeah, not so hot on that movie. I think it's a very B.
His movies are all kind of like...
Or B minus.
I mean, Annihilation was fun in that it's ambitious and stupid at the same time. And Natalie Portman's very serious.
Yes, but, Natalie Portman's always very serious. I've interviewed her before, and she was very serious on the day that I interviewed her. I had to ask very politely if she would allow me to take her photo.
Yeah, I don't want to work with anyone like that ever in my life.
No, you don't want to get near Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah.
No.
Any last, I guess, pot shots, or are we wrapping up on the?
Yeah,
Veronique?
I mean, I
pot shots. I don't know why I said pot shots.
Not pot
like
shots,
I want to dig at it.
No, just parting glances. Is there anything you?
Well, let me glance at the screen real quick, and I kind of actually forgot this scene. That's interesting. The one time I look over my shoulder, I totally forgot this scene. Anyway, that's Poland for you. People are randomly waiting for you in hallways, asking for money, smoking cigarettes. They look like some sort of Russian revolutionary from the early 20th century.
Oh, and this thing has the flasher too.
God,
the guy who walked. That's kooky.
That's wild. You see, that's what I'm talking. I love those little random moments because you forget that, like, yeah, he's this art house dude, but then all of a sudden there's a fucking dick in your face.
It was a big one too. This guy's he looks like a businessman. He's got of course the obligatory trench coat, and she's just sitting there on the bench, and he opens the trench coat, keeps right on walking, and
well, I love that she kind of laughs at the end because like this guy has no clue that I almost just had a heart attack. I could care less about his fucking flashed penis at this moment.
Yeah, it didn't really seem to bother her too much. She went about her day just fine.
I think it just grounded her back from her heart attack. God bless. This was fun.
Yeah. So yeah. Thank you so much, Mikhail, for coming on Le Grande Bouffe, the Big Feast. For all of our great listeners out there in crazy places like Iceland and the UK, and we've had a lot of listeners from Vietnam recently.
I love Iceland. I was there recently. I love all 10 of their movies too.
And Poland and Portugal. We've had listeners in Poland and Porto, Portugal. I hope that you will visit colesmithy.com, and if you are so inclined to contribute through Patreon, even $5 a month really helps us keep the lights on around here. And please remember to turn your cell phones off when you're walking, driving, riding a bicycle, or watching a movie.
Oh, definitely while watching a movie.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I cut you off from your life, but I fucking hate how rude theaters have gotten.
I couldn't agree more. That's a great note to end on.
Even